So recently I purchased this Vevor Pnuematic Jack to add to my garage. I've had a Craftsman floor jack. This is a 3-ton floor jack that I've had for a while, but I was going to be doing the brakes on my car, and I thought I might need an extra jack just to get it up on all of the jack stands. And so as I was doing some research, I ran into this. It's from a company called Vevor, which I've never heard of, and it's a product that up until now I had never seen, which is a pneumatic bag jack. And basically it lifts the car with compressed air that goes into this into the top of the jack and then fills up this bag. And so I looked at some of the videos online and they seemed to be pretty good. The reviews seemed to be pretty good. So I decided I would purchase it and give it a try. So what I'm going to do today is I ran a series of tests with this vacuum, both looking at the height differences between the two, how far it jacks up the car, how quickly it works, as well as I used it on the brake job that I did recently on the Audi S5. And so I'm going to give you some impressions that I have of using this in comparison to it, show you how it works and some of the statistics, and then at the end I'll wrap up and give you my final impressions. One just really quick note is you will need an air compressor to run this. Obviously, it's pneumatic, it requires air. I got an air compressor for Christmas. It's a 150 PSI rigid air compressor, so that solved that problem for me. If you don't have one, that's something that you'll need to think about as you add to the cost of this, but if you've been looking for an excuse to get one anyway, this is a good enough reason.
Okay, when you first receive the Vevor Jack, it comes in a box and it's disassembled, but there's really not a lot of parts you have to put together. So the first thing you'll need to do is you'll need to connect the two handle pieces together. So this part that I'm marking as part number 1 goes into part number 2. Now what I've found is that the fitting is very, very snug. So I had to use a rubber mallet and kind of bang it a few times just to get part 1, the top of the handle, into the bottom part of the handle, because with the coating that they have on it, it doesn't actually fit in and slide in very well. Now once it's in there, you'll see there's 2 little openings for 2 screws to go in. You'll see that in the kind of the pack of screws they have. There are 6 screws that look the same, and that's for connecting the handle to the main bag unit, and then for connecting the control unit to the handle. And then there's 2 other ones that just kind of screw in. Now it's just holding it in by tension, but quite honestly, once you get the upper handle in there, it's super hard to get out because you could barely get it in anyway. One of the things that gave me a little bit of pause when I was assembling this are not only the assembly instructions, but also the instructions for use. You can see here that they spent 0 time translating this into English. They certainly didn't pay a native English speaker to do it, because it says when inflated the jack ride and vice versa, which I have no idea what that means. So that's a little bit of concerning when you think about the production quality that might have went into something that you are going to put your car at the mercy of, or potentially your body if you get under this. So my recommendation, as always, is always use jack stands before you put your body under it, or as soon as you have it jacked up, put jack stands underneath any jack really, but certainly this one. Once you have the handle put together, then you can attach the handle to the bag unit. You'll see there's 4 screws and bolts that will go together, or nuts and bolts that will go together here. One of the things you can do is you can feed this orange tubing. If you feed it through before you connect it, it's a little bit easier. I didn't do that, so it kind of got kinked and I had to kind of wiggle it and work with it to get it out. But once it goes through that bottom, the bottom part of the handle, it feeds up and then comes out of a slot in the top part of the handle that will connect it to the control unit. So if you put that in first, it'll make it easier. Connect that up, and then you put on the control unit, connect it through, and then you'll need to hook the tube up into the nozzle that's coming out of that control unit. There's also a little nut that goes over the hose, so when you put the hose onto the nozzle and you tighten that nut over it, it really makes sure it has a sealed connection. I also had to cut the tubing down a little bit, so you'll just measure and cut that to make sure that it's not too long, otherwise it kind of kinks as well. So that's it to get it all put together. Now operation is very simple. The green handle opens the airflow to allow compressed air in. You can close that to stop it. The red handle will allow compressed air out. And that little like pull tab there, that'll let whatever is left in the bag out. So usually I will open the red handle, let it all out, and then at the very end, once the red handle's closed, I pull that pull tab and it releases the last bit of air. And that's really it. Super simple. Let's look at some of the dimensions. So fully deflated, the bag is 5 3/4 inches tall. And if you compare that to my Craftsman floor jack, it's about 5 3/8 inches tall. So the Craftsman floor jack is a little bit lower. That means if you have a lower profile car, this may not work for you. Even with the Craftsman floor jack being that low, it still at times kind of is close to getting under my vehicle. I actually have a separate low profile jack, so if I was to lower the car, I would probably have to use that jack to start it. But overall, it's not a huge difference between the two. Now, when I did jack the car up, the bag jack, the Vevor jack, was only able to get my car, and I'm measuring to the bottom of my trim piece here. It was able to get it to 14 3/8 inches or 14 1/4 inches off the ground. And in comparison, the Craftsman jack got it to 17 1/8. So almost 3 inches taller, the Craftsman was able to get it off the ground, which is a pretty significant difference, especially if you plan on getting jack stands under the car to go underneath. The other thing that you'll notice, obviously, is that the circumference and diameter of this is quite a bit larger than a regular floor jack and the Craftsman floor jack that I have, and that means it really can't get into all of the same places that a regular jack would. This happened during the brake job where there was a jack point in the rear, or actually it wasn't a jack point, there was a place in the rear of the car that I wanted to jack the car up, and I couldn't get the Vevor jack in there, and so I had to pull it out and then bring the Craftsman jack in order to do it. So that makes it difficult depending on the use that you have for it. As far as storage is concerned, it is pretty compact and it stands up on end, so you can just lean it up against the wall. You can see it takes up a lot less room than my Craftsman jack, and so I would really, it's an A+ for that, especially if you're in a place that doesn't have a lot of space or your garage is filled with other stuff like mine is. This really didn't take up a lot of extra room. So let's get to testing the Vevor jack. Once you have the jack in place and the air compressor filled up and attached, you simply open the green nozzle to allow air in. And I did this twice and it took about the same amount of time each time. Now, I don't completely open the green nozzle. I kind of open it a little bit, allow it to make contact with the car, and then open it. And it took about 24 seconds in both runs. So when testing the Craftsman, it took me about 31 seconds to jack the car up with the Craftsman jack. And as you can see, I started off with some shorter motions at the beginning just to make sure that, once again, the jack has made contact in the right place with the car. And then I go into kind of larger motions to get it moving, and until I got it up to where I felt it was about the same or comfortable. Now, obviously, I can tell you there's considerably more effort in using the Craftsman jack versus the Vevor jack, but it's also quite a bit quieter, as you can tell as well. So when it comes to lowering the car, it's fairly simple. You just open the red nozzle and allow the compressed air out. Now, the first time I did this, I opened it fairly quickly, and that resulted in quite a herky-jerky lowering of the car that took about 22 seconds. The second time, I did a little bit more smoothly, but then it took 60 seconds. So I found the best is somewhere in between. Now, if you compare that to lowering with a floor jack, you just simply turn the handle. However, if you've ever used a floor jack, you know that sometimes you can tighten that handle so tight that when you try to release it, it also has a herky-jerky or sometimes very quick lowering of the car that's a little bit uncomfortable. However, I've done this a lot with my floor jack, so I was able to smoothly lower the car in about 12 seconds. So quite a bit quicker and also quite a bit smoother.
So what are my final impressions of the Vevor Pnuematic Jack? Well, for about $100, it's actually not bad. I like it for certain applications, and certainly if I was needing to just quickly take off one of the tires on my car and get something done, I probably would pull this one out. I like the way how it stores really compact. Obviously, you do need to have your air compressor ready to go and powered up, so if you need to add that to the time of getting it ready to go, maybe you could take the floor jack, but I just found it easier, especially as I get older, I kind of just get it under the car, flip that nozzle, and the car is now jacked up versus me having to lay on my back and, inch it up until the regular floor jack makes contact, and then 1, 2, 3, 10, 15 times before the car is jacked up properly so that I can, do whatever I need to do under the car. So I think it's a good jack overall. I don't know if I would have it as my only jack, really. Sometimes I'm a little bit concerned because the bag is a little leaning as the car's up on there. Certainly it doesn't jack the car up as high as this one, so if you need to get under the car and you want to get it as high as possible onto jack stands, this probably isn't going to work as well. But if you need a second jack, number one, or if mostly what you're doing is just jacking the car up to take the tires off or to do things around the brakes and suspension, it's not that bad. I would highly recommend this, and for the cost, it's really good. I mean, at $100. Now, if you do factor in the cost of, you know, an air compressor, certainly that pushes it up a little higher, but an air compressor is one of those tools where it's really great to have because you can use it for so many different things. You know, just getting air tools is another thing that I'm thinking about now. So I would maybe rate it like a B if I was going to give it a letter grade. I think a B is a good rating. I would still lean to having a regular floor jack as my first jack or as my primary jack, and then this as kind of a secondary or to use it in different kinds of scenarios. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video. I'm going to do other kinds of videos here on SH Auto. Definitely going to be doing some videos on the S5. I just did the brake, so I'm going to be doing some videos probably on what I did there, as well as my track day videos and other things. If you have any ideas of what I could do on the channel, whether it's around tools or whether it's around auto-related stuff, please let me know in the comments. Love to hear from you. Thanks again. Bye.